my introduction, so we're good there. And why should you be listening to me? Well, I have 15 years of user experience, a lot of design, and a ton of user research. And over the time I've spent, especially with HP, I've spent time with users in these areas. It's kind of been a long, strange road. So just for the sake of this talk, let's set the scenario. You have a client in heavy industry, manufacturing, construction, and they're interested in a mobile solution, but they've tried this before. They've tried just handing out devices, they've tried, throwing some interfaces out there, but nothing had ever worked. So now, your mission, and you will accept it, is to determine how to meet the user's needs. How are you going to figure out what they will actually adapt? Well, sounds like a job for user-centered design. We've heard a little bit about this earlier, which is great. User-centered design is one of those things that's well-defined by what it isn't. And just raise your hand a little bit if one or more of these seem familiar. Well, it's easy to code this way. Well, the CTO loves drop-downs, so everything should be a drop-down. Oh, well, I use mobile devices, and I'm on the web all the time, and it works for me, so it must work for the users. We call these things this in the database, and eventually the users will figure it out. Oh, these users have had this interface for 15 years, and if they change it, they are going to freak out. Oh, everybody's playing Candy Crush, so it should look like that. And then there's out of the box. Well, it came that way, so there we are. So what is it, if that's what it's not? It's intentionally putting the user at the center of the process. It's a methodology that starts with the user and works out. It means learning about their users, their needs, their expectations, their objectives, their goals, their frustrations, and their environment. It means taking that information and feeding it into the design, and then testing that interface with actual users because you are not them. Does it make a difference? It makes business effective. If you are rolling out something large and then you have to train every employee for 3 consecutive weeks to use it, that's a lot of lost productivity. That's a lot of pain. And then they might not even use it. The effort is going to happen sometime. Better easy and early than late and hard later. Also more expensive. I think of it like a surgeon washing their hands and putting on gloves before surgery. It's a little bit of effort. It's a tiny investment. You can do that, or you can spend 10 months, maybe a year, maybe 2, trying to clean it up. So one of my favorite user-centered design methodologies is contextual inquiry, because it gets you out there with the users. The focus is on the user, and it's particularly the context of the user. That's why you need to actually spend time with them. These are individual with sessions. Remember, we're talking heavy industry, no managers. Every time someone has their manager walking around with them, looking over their shoulder, they're not doing things the way they always do them. They're doing things the way they think their manager wants to see them doing them, and suddenly your data isn't worth anything. These sessions should be about 90 minutes to 2 hours each. You want to blend into the background, but you don't want to be onerous. And participants are asked to think out loud. Occasionally you're going to ask a question or two, like, you seem to be looking for something. Can you tell me more about that? Why not just ask the users what they want? Believe me, in large-scale welding shops, I've asked myself that. Wouldn't that be easier? Just bring everybody into a nice, air-conditioned, clean conference room with ice water and comfortable chairs, and we'll just ask them what they want. The problem is that doesn't work. The user's mental model will keep them from asking for core functionality. A person's mental model develops over time as they become more and more familiar with something. It becomes part of their mental model, becomes something they take for granted to the point that it goes without saying. And when something becomes something that goes without saying, people don't say it. When my husband asked me what I was looking for in a car, I mentioned the seats and the stereo system, but I didn't mention the motor or the tires. Also, complexity is now normal. Since an activity becomes part of a user's mental model, they might be doing something complex, 100 steps, but since they've been doing it every day for 10 years, it's not hard anymore. They won't call it complex. People are also bad at describing their environment. It's our workplace. They see it every day. It's the mental model in the way. Getting around these mental models is the power of user research, and I can't stress it enough. That's the importance of getting to know your users in the user's natural environment. So for heavy industry, you can't just walk into the shipyard because you'll end up in Gitmo or onto an assembly line. You need to really follow the hierarchy of these spaces. Don't get confused with an efficiency expert. That actually happened to me, and the union told people not to talk to me. It's like, oops. So what you do is you have your client point of contact, talk to the managers, you talk to the supervisors, you talk to the workers, and make it clear to every rung along that chain. You're not talking about a project. You're not talking about deadlines. You're not making promises. You're learning more to see how the current systems can better serve the people doing the work. Carve it into your arm. Just repeat it to every single person, and then they know, oh, it's not about reporting on people. It's not talking about a project. It's just learning more to see how the current systems can better serve the people. You'll want to schedule these sessions at shift change if at all possible. That's when you see the neat stuff, the transfer of work, how problems are communicated. This is a great time to be there, even though it'll probably be at 5 o'clock in the morning or 8:30 at night, sometimes both in the same day. And do not hesitate to send women. I've been to a lot of these environments, and I'm sure that everybody has this outdated stereotype of a woman walking by a construction site with a lot of harassment. And believe me, I've seen women in roles of welding supervisors, foremen, you name it. It's a changed world out there. And also, since you're following that hierarchy, there's accountability all throughout the chain. So let's talk safety equipment. You're all going to want to invest in some good steel-toed footwear. Yeah. So user-centered design means it's not about you, and as soon as you're blading, that's over. So you want to keep the focus on the user. Your client will have instructions for gear, and you will follow them. If you have to wear big, dorky plastic glasses, it's because somebody lost an eye, so it's always a good idea. Long pants and sleeves. A lot of places don't say to do it, but these are pokey places, they're scratchy places, they're burny places. Better your clothes than you. And get the good steel-toed boots, not on the previous screen there, but I was actually in a work site, and on the supervisor's shelf was my exact model of steel-toed shoe. And I asked him, and he said, oh, well, it's a teaching tool. It doesn't have the steel upper that protects your foot. And look at it. And I looked, there was a big hole, and he said, yeah, a guy had a bunch of molten metal, and it poured through the shoe into his foot. And so, yeah, get the good ones. Take the safety training seriously. These are the most ridiculous, amateurish, hilarious videos in the world. But if something happens to you because you weren't paying attention and you were laughing too hard, then that's on you. So you're there, it's 5 o'clock in the morning, you're tired and cold and covered in a safety equipment that makes you look a little silly. They do this every day, so you should not do about it. So now we're at the work site, and these are way not office-y. You're probably used to doing contextual inquiry in an office setting where you sit next to the user, you're having them think out loud, you're typing away your notes on the laptop. Well, in these areas, you'll find that there might not be a desk. You might be walking around half the time, so even bringing your laptop might be feasible. Also, in your contextual inquiry, you're used to just paying attention to the user. Your focus is very entrained just on that one person. But in these situations, you got moving targets. Forklifts are moving, overhead cranes, there's sparks. If you get your leg impaled, then it's gonna ruin the rest of your day. So it's a 360 type of attention. It's very different. Also, I found that prior to doing this type of work, I was very focused on noise, on what the person was saying, what they were doing, and it was half sonic, half what I could see. These places are so noisy that you might not have that anymore. It might all be visual. So that's something to keep in mind too. So let's gather that data. Note the technology that's there. There's usually some. See how well it's helping and harming the user get their work done. Also with personal interactions. You don't want to throw away the good to enter mobile. You want to build to make better. Also be sensitive about how you ask your questions, and this is true for any contextual inquiry. I remember asking this one guy, is that application hard to use? Because frankly, he was sweating bullets. And I could, as soon as it was out of my mouth, I could see the gears turning behind his eyes as he went, well, she's asking me if it's hard. It's part of my doing my work. If she's asking if my work is hard for me to do, nope. Oh. So the next person I asked, how long does it take to learn this application? Now I'm asking about time and not their ability, and I got some great answers. Do try not to touch the hot torpedo sleeve. I saw one, it was clearly labeled. I couldn't help, my finger came out, I had to touch it, and only after my finger made contact did I realize it was still glowing on the inside. So, most of these environments, shipyards, assembly lines, construction sites, they're either outside or very close to it. They might be huge cavernous buildings that are not well heated or air conditioned. So you need to think beyond the season you're in. You might be meeting with your users on a nice cool spring day. Look at weather.com. It might be 107 for weeks at a stretch, like Dallas, Texas, or brutally cold in the wintertime. So you need to think about that and how that will impact your mobile decisions. Look at the surfaces, the walls, the people. How much grit and grime you see will get into whatever device it is you're recommending. What about light? Is there going to be a lot of glare from the sun? Are they going to need to use it at night? Are they working under bright lights? And also that noise. If you've got a lot of diesel engines, overhead cranes, voice commands, audible prompts might prove useless. Is there even connectivity? If someone's working down underground or inside a ship or even in a mine, there might be none. Also, what are users doing with their hands? Not like that. No, are they carrying things around? Are they needing to use their hands to go up ladders or adjust dials? Anything you tell them to carry need to have a way to carry it. You don't want to give them a burden. Are cameras even allowed? A lot of these places do not allow them whatsoever. So if you recommend a mobile device, it should be one that does not have a camera in it, because an expensive solution shouldn't come with an expensive retrofit. So listen to what the real challenges are, because that's what will surprise you, and that's what, in our little scenario, our client didn't think of to do in the first place. So here we have a tale from the field. Here we have Greg. He's a nuclear quality inspector. Little persona, not his real name, not his real face, but he did say, sometimes we freeze. Some days we're drenched in sweat. So he worked for a shipbuilder for the US military, felt that iPads for everybody, that would help the nuclear inspectors do their job. This has got to be the answer. Greg, the nuclear inspector, he works in areas that are often very, very hot, as in Virginia in the summertime in a metal box without air conditioning. No Wi-Fi, no cell access. He needs both his hands to get into these places. He puts his stuff kind of wedged down his pants and takes notes on what he describes as increasingly soggy paper. Comes back to his desk, and he starts to transcribe his notes into his report, and this is where his pain point was. He felt it frustrating because he was doing the same work twice. So, are iPads the answer?
Yes.
Yeah, not so much. iPads would need to be carried. Problem, they'd slip right out of his sweaty hands. And his pain point wasn't the ability to type stuff as he saw the need. His problem was the ability to, needing to do it twice. So I asked him if he ever considered a solution, and he described, well, I want a little box I can talk to that would fit in my pocket, and then I'd get back to my desk and I'd plug it into my computer and it would turn it into text. Oh, that's doable. And since auto transcription could happen at the desk, the connectivity wouldn't matter. So, in our little scenario, we've spent some time with users down at the site. We've gathered up some data. Now it's time to deliver some findings to the client. And believe it or not, when you do this, they're as nervous as you are because you've been in their house looking at their stuff, and they're a little scared. So you start easing it in. Say thanks to everyone. They helped you get these little sessions scheduled. Sometimes that takes some doing, so this is the time to be thankful. Start with positives. People were following safety. People were getting there on time. Everyone seemed dedicated. If you have something nice to say, this is your time to say it. Then for each finding, present a recommendation. If you just come up with finding, that's a bucket of problems, and nobody likes that. You're coming to them with a list of solutions that will make them more profitable and more productive. Everybody likes that. And you're going to include user requirements. Now, everyone's familiar with business requirements. That's the content that needs to go on the screen, the what that needs to happen. The user requirements is based on research, and it is the how. So here's an example of user research in motion. This is an example, a real-world example, from a trailer mover at a transportation docking yard. It's called a hostler. It's a terrifying little beast of a truck that moves trailers from one dock door to the next. And we were coming up with a dashboard-mounted device and interface for that. So it was away from the steering wheel, so it needed to have a large font so people could read it. Noisy as heck. It had no doors, so all alerts had to be visual. Can't use the interface while driving, obviously, because otherwise things get expensive. High priority moves need to be at the top. You don't have people digging for information you want them to see. And of course, you need to minimize the number of keystrokes. Now, this research was done in a day that was a midsummer, so it was hot. But I found that in the winter, they were 2 pairs of gloves. So this was the result. You can see a nice big font there. Priority at the top, nice clean information. You don't see more than needs to be there. The user takes their big old finger, maybe wearing 2 pairs of gloves, hits that accept button, and then you see the section on the right there. That's what they see while driving from one door to the next. They don't have to memorize, wait, was I driving this from 17 or 71? They can just glance over and see that. Once they're there, how? Done. So that's an example of user research turning into data, into user requirements, into data-driven design. So, you've now seen a little bit about user-centered design, clearly a refresher for most of you. A little bit about scheduling time with users and staying safe. Also gathering the data, research results, and designing from that data. So, thank you.